Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid. But today is Monday, the 15th of November, 2021. These are the stories that will be under discussion during the course of the show. We'll begin, ladies and gentlemen, with the conflict between Israel and Palestine. It has been around 33 years that the Declaration of Independence was signed on this very day today. Despite that, there's no respite in sight as far as the Palestinian people are concerned. Also, an Israeli human rights group has said that on Sunday, 183 incidents of Jewish settler violence have happened against Palestinians, in which Israeli forces did not participate or did not stop these incidents of violence against the perpetrators. In fact, in some of those incidents, they even joined them. Documented a total of 451 settler attacks on Palestinians in the West Bank since early last year. This is the number. It's a very disturbing number, and it's a very disturbing state of events, and the world needs to take cognizance of it. This is going to be our first segment. Our second segment, that is our second story of the day, concerns COP26. And of course, the concerns shown by the president concerning India and China, and of course, their determination as to not reduce the coal as much as is desired by the top nations of the world as far as climate change is concerned. A lot of countries have made important pledges. Nevertheless, the pledges especially made by India are not as trustworthy as the others. Alok Sharma has said that the actions have left him deeply frustrated. This is going to be our second story of the day. Then we're going to talk about press freedom inside of India, and we know what happened in Tripura as the mosques were vandalized and a lot of violence ensued as a result. Now, when people talk about incidents such as these, they are put behind bars. A case in point is the detention of Samirdhi and of course Sukunia and Jha, and of course the Tripura police has been asked to let them out. Nevertheless, press freedom has a lot of question marks when it comes to India. This is going to be our third segment of the day. Then we will be talking about Dr. Sidra Salim. This is of course a success story as no other, and we love to share such success stories with you. She grew up in the slums of Karachi, between New Karachi and Gulshan-e-Me'mar. Nevertheless, now she is a neurologist and she is in the United States of America. It is such stories of determination that push you to the right side. Where there is a will, ladies and gentlemen, there is always a way, and Dr. Sidra Salim has proven that. Let's come to our first story, ladies and gentlemen. That concerns Israel and Palestine, the conflict that has been raging since decades. A lot of resolutions that are in the United Nations. Nevertheless, nothing has happened. A human rights group in Palestine talks about 183 incidents of Jewish settler violence against Palestinians where the Israelis did not intervene, the Israeli forces did not intervene, and even in some cases participated in those. Also, today is the 33rd anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. More in the following report.
The horrors of Israeli settler colonialism remain vividly apparent in Palestine, where the country periodically turns into a war zone as youth confront Israeli occupation forces. Palestinian homes are raided and ransacked, young men and children arrested, shot at, and assaulted. Underlining how the occupied region has become hotbed of resistance and violence, an Israeli rights group revealed that in 183 incidents of Jewish settler violence against Palestinians, Israeli forces did not intervene to protect Palestinians and at times actively joined the attacks. In the startling report, the Tselem rights group unraveled Israeli settler colonial designs by stating that settler attacks against Palestinians are a strategy employed by the Israeli apartheid regime, which seeks to advance and complete its misappropriation of more and more Palestinian land. Earlier, New York-based Human Rights Watch published a 213-page report in which the international rights watchdog accused Israel of pursuing policies of apartheid and persecution against Palestinians and against its own Arab minority that amounts to crimes against humanity. International Criminal Court also announced that it would investigate war crimes in the Israeli-occupied West Bank and Gaza Strip, with the Israeli military named as a possible perpetrator. It's pertinent to mention here that Palestine marks the 33rd anniversary of Declaration of Independence today, a symbolic declaration proclaimed by Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat on the 15th of November 1988. Thus, it's crucial for the international community to intervene and hold Israel accountable for committing war crimes and crimes against humanity in Palestine.
To talk more about this issue that has been prevalent since decades, and of course no resolution seems to be in sight as far as all this conflict is concerned between Israel and the Palestinians. We've been joined by Syed Muhammad Ali in the studios. He is the Director of Strategic Affairs of CAS. Syed Muhammad Ali sir, thank you very much to have joined us. Ali, first of all, let's talk about the 33rd anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. This is of course 33 years since that declaration was signed by Yasser Arafat Sahab. And of course he, in front of the Palestinian National Council, and he announced a lot of measures that to date have not really come to fruition. Why is that? What are the basic reasons behind that?
One word, international politics. And it's very unfortunate. And I think the glaring human rights violation, the settler colonialism, and the lack of conflict resolution in Palestine represents one of the glaring inabilities of international law, international institutions like United Nations to live up to the expectations of the people, to resolve the conflict and to address the human rights condition that is affecting and becoming worse with each passing day. But for Pakistan, I think this is very important because a lot that is happening in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is perhaps based on a leaf out of the textbook that the Israelis are following.
Is that an emulation? Are they emulating whatever is happening in Palestine?
Exactly. So I see a lot of similarity because unfortunately the occupation forces in IOK are seeking inspiration and guidance from what brutalities and oppression the Israeli forces are carrying out in West Bank and Gaza. And as you rightly pointed out in your introductory remarks, more than 450 incidents
451 to be precise.
Incidents have been reported, including the settler violence and colonialism. And what does that mean? Just for the benefit of your viewers, that tantamounts to a deliberate policy of the state oppression in which the exploitation and violation of human rights is part of the state policy. And it is not just that, you know, these people are farmers and traders. It's not just that their land is taken away, their livelihood means are deprived, water supply to the farmers is diverted towards the settlements. New settlements are introduced, so these people are not just deprived of their land, their livelihood. Sometimes even when they are physically harmed and brutalized, they are denied medical assistance as well. There are people who had to sell their land in order to afford the medical care. This is how worse this situation is. But lastly, let me just point it out that Pakistan's long-standing and principled support for the Palestinian cause, not many people know, predates the creation of Pakistan. And it is not just because of what the state of Israel is doing. Not many people know that the first resolution passed by the Muslim League, the founding party that created Pakistan, was in 1918 when they passed a resolution condemning the British occupation of Palestine, which was subsequently replaced by the Israeli occupation. And Quaid-e-Azam, our great founder, sent 2 envoys during the Second World War as a mark and as an evidence of his long-standing support to the Palestinian cause. So, and the Muslim League established a special fund to raise money in order to help our Palestinian brothers. So we are very close to it because what we are witnessing in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is almost a mirror image of what the Israelis are doing.
And also what another mirror image is the human rights violations and curbing all those who talk about these human rights violations. Now, if you remember well, Ali, at the end of October this very year, Israel outlawed 6 Palestinian human rights groups and said that they were in fact terrorist organizations. And we see a very similar thing that is occurring in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir as well. At the same time, we also have a lot of political issues spurring out in what we call the Palestinian Authority, whether it be the new embassy, whether it be other issues, whether it be some countries favoring a settlement, other countries not, some countries talking in front of the United Nations saying that they want a two-state solution, but behind the back saying completely different else. How can we handle this dichotomy, this hypocrisy, as far as what you mentioned yourself, political issues are concerned regarding the Palestinian issue?
First off, as a Pakistani, I think it's very important for us to recognize that the diplomatic, moral, ethical and legal stance and the locus standi that we have on the issue of Kashmir is almost identical to the issue of Palestine. Because these two issues are the longest outstanding issues, oldest issues on the agenda of the United Nations. So when Pakistan takes a strong stance on the Palestinian issue, it vindicates and reinforces our moral and ethical and legal stance on Kashmir as well, because both are under military occupation against the wishes of the popular Muslim majority being controlled, exploited, harmed by occupiers and colonizers. One. Secondly, I think at the international level, Pakistan, along with other responsible members of the international community, must continue to raise their voices. And thirdly, at the human rights level, at the think tank level, at the academic level, at the media level, I think the reality of both the Palestinians and what is faced by the Kashmiris need to be exposed on a regular basis, so that this attempt by both Israel and India to misrepresent the UN mandated right of self-determination as a terrorist movement should be exposed. That
is a very important point, and I'll take it with my guest who's joined me online, Faheem Alhamid, Senior Strategist who specializes in conflict zones. Thank you very much, Mr. Alhamid, to have joined us. Sir, when you look at all the atrocities that are being committed in the Israeli territories, and today is, of course, the 33rd anniversary of the Declaration of Independence as well. How do you view all of that, and what needs to be done, A, by the world at large, and B, by the Muslim Ummah?
Very much, brother, and I'm really very honored to speak in the presence of a very distinguished guest and speaker. Brother, you know, this question, what are required from the international situation in Palestinian territory and how we can going to move forward. I think this question has been asked for the last 40 to 50 years. The problem, brother, is with us, not with the international community. Let's be very transparent in our approach. I mean, you know, what we had done and now I am speaking, I am not speaking as a Saudi, I am speaking as Arab and Muslim national, as the Pakistani is speaking, because we are one Muslim Ummah. What we have done to the cause of Palestine. Number one, this question need to be answered transparently. Number two, brother, you know, all crisis which is orchestrated in the Middle East, in the neighboring of Pakistan, within Pakistan, and all Muslim Ummah, the major reason to bury the Ummah, Palestine and Al-Quds. So what is required now, and immediately that, you know, the big powers in the Muslim bloc, of course, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Indonesia, Malaysia, under the OIC, we should have, you know, a certain strategy to have certain, you know, consistently. The issue of Palestine should be always in the agenda of the representative of OIC, and of course, it's always discuss in the foreign ministry, but we have to mechanize. Every month we should have a meeting on Palestine. We should have to discuss what we have done, what is what we are supposed to do in the Arab League, what we are supposed to do in other international community, especially in UN. Without that, brother, we will be having hundreds of, uh, of, of, uh, of panel discussion, and it will, end up with shukriya and goodbye and Palestinian
I
would suffer.
totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. But sir,
Sorry, brother, maybe this is very transparent, but this is fact. And your colleague will be certainly agreeing with me. We should blame ourselves.
all right, sir. I also agree with you when you say that we need to have a lot of introspection as far as this
Exactly.
Palestinian issue is concerned. But when you talk also about all the different talks that have been had in the last couple of decades and nothing concrete has really come out of it, how can these countries come together? I mean, you talk about the countries should come together and do an
Yes,
immediate
I
reassessment
will
of what
tell you,
they've done.
brother. We are having the contact group of Kashmir, which is regularly meeting in the sidelight of any foreign minister's meeting. We are having, several contact group, being established under the umbrella of OIC. So why don't we have a contact group? I think we are having a contact group. Brother, Palestinian is always on the highest agenda of IC. Nobody is denying this fact, brother. Nobody denying that OIC is trying its best. But OIC is a secretariat, brother. They are not decision makers, and that should be very clear. So OIC should, some of the countries should make requests that we should have Palestinian issue on a monthly basis, let's say. Maybe sometime on the representative level of OIC, sometime extraordinary, sometime on foreign minister summit. Depends on what's going on the Palestinian territory and how much aggressive Israelis are. In fact, Israelis were always aggressive against Palestinian. So this is one main issue that we should have. Some countries should submit requests that we should meet on a regular basis.
All right. Thank you very much, Faheem Alhamid Saab, senior strategist who specializes in conflict zones, who have talked to us all the way from Saudi Arabia. We'll come back to our studio. Ari, final question. You've heard what Alhamid Saab had to say. There is an urgent need for the Muslim countries across the world to reassess, to see what has gone wrong, so that the two major core issues, especially Palestine and Kashmir, why aren't they resolved despite decades and decades of resolutions and talks and meetings? What needs to be done in your point of view? Let's concentrate on Palestine this time. What needs to be done in your point of view in the next, say, year or so?
I think very briefly, there are three things which need deliberate consideration. Faheem Saab is an old friend. He has also visited Pakistan. I think besides the narrative building and exposing the reality, there are two very tangible things that the entire responsible international community, Muslim Ummah and the Arab world can do. One is the economic assistance and improving the economic cooperation with the Palestine. Palestine is a very vibrant economy. It has $8 billion worth of exports. So maybe recently the Palestinian ambassador to Pakistan gave a very important interview. He encouraged expanding the bilateral trade with Pakistan and with other countries, which will help them improve their economic well-being. The third is the political angle, and it's not just the OIC, which is an important forum. There are 2 US congressmen of Palestinian origin. There are 4 ministers in the European Parliament of Palestinian origin. These people can play a very important role, and I think the role of Arab diaspora is also very important in influencing the world opinion and also the decision makers around the world.
Thank you very much, Syed Mohammed Ali, Director of Strategic Affairs, CAST, who have talked to us about this issue that lingers on in the world since so many decades, and nothing concrete has come out of it. And of course, so many developments, but not in the positive sense that we are seeing and we have talked about as well. Pakistan, ladies and gentlemen, has really supported the Palestinian cause since day one, and it will continue to support the Palestinian cause. Let's hope and let's wait for that resolution to come sooner than later. We'll go to our second segment, but before that, a short break. Stay tuned.
In order to write about life, first you must live it.
Welcome back. In our second segment, we're going to talk climate change, COP26. A lot of reservations showed by the President as far as the COP26 attitude of India and China is concerned, saying that their actions had left him deeply frustrated. He said, and I quote, "We are on our way to consigning coal to history. This is an agreement we can build on." But of course, he had his reservations concerning these two countries. At the same time, there's a lot of smog as far as Lahore is concerned. It has touched an index of 425, that is the highest ever. So in fact, as far as air pollution goes, the #1 city across the world is Lahore, that is followed by New Delhi. To talk about that and more, we've been joined by three important specialists today, because we thought it was important to talk about this. But we'll be talking about this after a short break. Stay tuned. So So in our second segment, we're going to discuss climate change, COP26, the reservations by the President, COP26, as well as smog in Lahore. We've been joined by three important guests. Let me introduce them to you one by one. On my very right is Maryam Shabbir. She's a leading environmentalist. Thank you very much, Maryam. Now our second guest is Dr. Ejaz Ahmad. He's a senior program fellow of the Institute of Urbanism. Thank you very much, Dr. Saab. And on Skype, we've been joined by our third guest, Munir Ahmed Saab, who's the executive director of Devcom. Assalamu alaikum, sir, and welcome to this segment. Let's begin with my two guests who are in the studios, and I'll start with Dr. Saab. Dr. Saab, COP26, what is the importance, and do you feel that all the pledges that have been made by the countries will really translate into action?
Not really. I mean, like, I think the term that you use, walk the talk, is actually it was just walk the talk only, and there were pledges even in Paris COP, and which have not been fulfilled. So unfortunately, even at the highest level of decision making, the most developed countries, so called, they have actually denied, in a sense, to contribute to the action which are required in order to reduce the impact of climate change globally. So which is very unfortunate, because many countries like Pakistan, who have not contributed to that extent into the global warming, are suffering from disasters and are on the top list, top 10 countries in the world, which are suffering from the actions which have been taken by all these developed countries. And now they are,
and of course, there is no respite in sight as well. And this is what Alok Sharma Saab says as well, who is the president of COP26. He says the Glasgow Climate Pact is a fragile will. Maryam, what do you have to say about that? Is it really a fragile win? The reservations that he has shown as far as China and India are concerned and coal is concerned, do you think that they are well justified?
I think technically, if you look at those pledges and China and India, and Paris Agreement, they are still in the category of developing countries. So in next COP, I think they should be discussing on how to, the countries which have achieved a certain progress in terms of economy and consumption of fossil fuel, they should be, promoted to the developed countries. That therefore they can, criticize those countries, and that is the reason India and China is giving that, we are a developing country and we are not contributing much, though they are contributing much when it comes to fossil fuels, and they have said that by 2060 and by 2070 they will be achieving net zero. So I think technically they are right, but not when it comes to climate change or the warming of the planet. They are very wrong. But here we are missing a point. This COP president is only targeting two countries, China and India, and we know the kind of economic war between US and the China. US is also a very major contributor to fossil fuels, and it has also not joined the pact, which is the pledge, I would say, which will end fossil fuels. But now, by the way, the term has been modified from phase out to phase down, because that will allow a lot of countries to keep using coal in the future.
That's a very important point. Munir Ahmed Saab, phasing down, the changing of the term phasing down from phasing out. Do you feel, as Maryam Shabbir says, is this going to help a lot of countries that are still using coal, and that includes a lot of very important developed countries as well? And do you feel that the COP26 is one of the last respites as far as climate change is concerned?
Thank you very much, Mr. Paula. COP26 has another declaration that is very ambitious, but what we have seen during the last 25 years since the inception of the UNFCCC, we have not seen any reduction or the implementation of the declarations in letter and spirit. And the same is the case, like even the most important was the Paris Agreement, but still we are lacking implementation of that agreement as well. And now from phasing out to phasing down means like it is a very lenient view of the carbon emissions that being emitted by the developed countries. So we need to have a very proactive role of the developed countries. And as you were talking about the smog in Lahore and Delhi, and we have two major polluters in our neighborhood. China, one of that is said to be the top polluter, and then India. And of course, like we have to suffer from this trans-boundary phenomena as well. And like in COP26, when we talk about reduction in the carbon emissions, we have less, thinking about the trans-boundary phenomena in the neighborhoods. We also need to make responsible the neighborhood if they are polluting the air. And the climate change, as Dr. Saab mentioned and Maryam mentioned, Pakistan is one of the major, one of the vulnerable countries, top 5, 7 top vulnerable countries of climate change, and that the phenomena is increasing day by day. Disasters are increasing, but there is no such vigorous actions are seen by the developed countries. As they promise to contribute to Green Climate Fund, they fail to contribute to the fund, and so the developing countries could not get funding for their mitigation and adaptation. So this scenario is entire seems to be just like a bunch of some words and bunch of some promises that remain unfulfilled.
Dr. Saab, as per Munir Saab, this is just a bunch of words that we put on and put a flowery mask on it and just put it forward, but doesn't translate into action. We are seeing what is happening in New Delhi and in Lahore as well. The two most polluted cities across the world have been named now, and of course the index 425 air quality index, that is extremely high. Yeah. What are the basic reasons for this air pollution? Let's come to our country first, in Lahore, and what needs to be done by us?
Well, I think it's now a known fact that some of the major pollutant which cause this phenomena of smog is transportation, vehicular emission, industrial emission, and agriculture burning, etc. And this has been going on for last many years. But I personally feel that over a period of time, the crop varieties have also changed. Earlier, and the practices, mechanized system. Earlier, we used to have the same rice, but people will actually harvest it from the base. So there was hardly any stubble left. Or very minimum stubble. Now there are varieties, and the machinery is utilized where like top is cut and the stubble remains in the ground. So people have no other option but burning. There are different techniques because right after paddy crop, then the sowing of wheat starts, and in order to make the field good enough for wheat sowing, they have to burn it. Otherwise, like now there are technologies like happy seeder, which are being used in certain part of Pakistan, in Punjab, near Lahore, and even in India, which actually ensures basically that wheat crop is sown regularly, and the amount of yield does not have any impact because of that.
Maryam, new technologies need to be introduced in order for us to cut on this burning of the crop, whether it be in Pakistan or in our neighborhood in India as well. But why aren't most of the farmers utilizing the new technology? Why are they still burning the crops?
No, first I'll just contribute to where Dr. Saab has left. When it comes to this issue of smog, government normally targets which is least contributor, farmers and brick kilns. Although major contributor, as Dr. Saab mentioned, is transport sector, then industries, and then comes agriculture sector, and that's where our focus should be. Now we have 5 anti-smog committees in Lahore formed this Saturday. Let's see what they would do in 30 days, that would be a magic, because in 30 days you can't do anything such which would make some progress. So as far as these technologies are concerned, first of all, farmers do not have enough money. This is high time where there is high inflation. They are mostly poor. They are not very, having large and majority of the farmers, of course, and they cannot, afford that technology. Government need government should, make available that technology to the farmers first, and second, their capacity building should be done by the agriculture extensions and relevant departments which government have. And after that, they should be expecting from the farmers to now burn their stubble. That should be the way forward. And I think that's where government is not taking action. They are directly imposing fine on them, and already they are burdened with a lot of inflation. And then due to this smog, blaming just two soft targets wouldn't be enough, and it would be very injustice.
All right. Munir Ahmed Saab, when it comes to air pollution in Punjab, do you feel that the industrialists and the transporters need to be the first ones to be taken to task?
Of course, you are right. As Maryam mentioned, that the Punjab government has formed some committees, and these committees are just like makeshift arrangements, and we have permanent arrangement that we have like agencies, environmental protection agencies. They keep sleeping entire year, and when like the season comes, in the winter season, usually we have smog, and then we form committees and we try to do some like emergency measures. But this is not the actual action that we need. In fact, Punjab government need to activate their environmental protection agency for a year long, and have strict measures for industry and vehicular pollution. As if you go to the streets of Lahore and in the suburban areas, you see the emissions from vehicles and industry is much higher than the farmers burning off their remains of the crops
this is what our guests have also been saying in the studios. So Munir Saab, of course, these people, these two segments of the society really need to be taken to task, and that is what our guests in the studios have also been saying. Taken to task, Dr. Ejaz Saab, but how can they be taken to task? Do you feel that a certain mechanism needs to be put into place in such a manner that they cannot evade it?
Well, I think the mechanism is already in place in the form of national environmental quality standards, in the form of provincial environmental quality standards. And the problem is the monitoring mechanism is not there. I mean, like there is hardly any commitment from the department. Just a few days ago, there was a press conference or press release from the Minister of Punjab saying that smog is not an issue in Punjab. So if that is the level of understanding from the highest level of regulator, I think it will be very difficult. Whatever mechanism you place, it will not work. You have to have a commitment in order to take care of all these issues. There is a policy which is already there in Punjab. I think it was formulated in 2017 to take action against the smog issue. Hardly any implementation. The national environmental quality standards throughout the year they apply for industrial pollution. So all the air pollution which is continuously feeding into the overall environment is going on throughout the year. So these national environmental quality standards are not being implemented, or they are not being monitored. There is vehicular inspection and certification system in place in Punjab that is not being followed. So I've seen that new rickshaws coming out of the industry, they are emitting more pollutants in the air, just brand new rickshaw.
I mean,
so these are, I mean, like
a lot of things need to be done. This is what you're trying to say. Maryam, last question. Do you feel that more and more people like yourself, like Dr. Ejaz, like Munir Saab, need to be made part of committees, need to be made part of such governmental initiatives that tend to curtail the rising air pollution?
I think in previously committees as well, right people are in place. They can do wonders, but implementation is what that is lacking. But I think there is problem of data as well. He just mentioned about our provincial environment minister. He was saying about smog. He doesn't have right capacity. But on the other hand, you see our neighboring country, India, their environment minister is tweeting on daily basis, morning and evening, about the standard standards, and they have shut down the schools. So, you know, we first really need to produce data on air quality, and then we can go to any other solution that is being made.
All right. Thank you very much
just want to add
to
one
have
sentence,
joined
like
us,
if
all
I'm
three
allowed.
of my guests. Dr. Munir Saab, thank you very much to have joined us online. Dr. Ejaz Saab, Maryam, Shabbir to have joined us. I think this is something that is very important, climate change. Pakistan being one of the most vulnerable countries, in the top 10 vulnerable countries. We are doing a lot of initiatives, but just Pakistan alone, you know, making initiatives, there needs to be as you said, as far as the air pollution goes, more of a tactful and aggressive policy so as to curtail the rising air pollution. And secondly, the world also needs to realize that until and unless developing and developed countries don't work together as far as curtailing the effects of climate change, nothing can happen. Thank you very much to all of my guests. Let's go to our third segment, ladies and gentlemen, and that concerns Tripura and of course HW News Network. What has happened is that journalist Samriddhi Sakunia and Swana Jha have been detained by Assam police on their way to Silchar. Assam police says they do not have any case against the journalists, but Tripura police asked them to detain them. And of course, this is a statement that came out, and this is of course in retaliation to what they have been saying as far as the incidents in Tripura are concerned. Dr. Muhammad Khan, who's a senior professor at the International Islamic University and an analyst as well, joins us online. Dr. Saab, thank you very much to have joined us. Dr. Saab, press freedom, curtailing of this press freedom in India and in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and elsewhere, isn't this putting a very, very bad name as far as India is concerned?
Thank you very much, Omar. Yes, it is so, because as you mentioned that Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir, that has been an area where there has been the total ban on the press for that matter. Then all the Muslim majority areas in India, there have been ban despite that there was a massive human rights violation. And apart from that, what it has gone wrong in the Assam for that matter, where Muslims, almost 2 million people, Muslims, they were deprived from their rights of property and owning the land, and later on other issues. So the press is indeed in a bad shape as far as India is concerned, and that speaks of that this is not what India claims as a secular state and India claims as a democratic state. So it is indeed a rejection of both these ideologies at the global level.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Muhammad Khan Saab, to have joined us, to have talked to us about the violation of press freedom. That is something that is continuously going on in India, and the latest the latest incident concerns the HW News Network, whose journalists were detained by the Assam police on their way to Silchar. And of course, this all concerns not only the violence with the violence in Assam, the concerns with the violence in other regions of India. Nevertheless, what needs to be done by India, if it wants to really be called itself as a democracy, which of course it more or less has no longer the right to, it needs to give the journalists the proper right to say what is exactly happening within India. That is all we have for today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with new segments and stories that matter to you and to us. Till then, Allah Hafiz and stay tuned for more.